All right, aloha, friends and family. We are recording today on the summer solstice of 2024, full moon energy, and it is my absolute delight to share with you a wonderful lady whom I have been excited to host for many, many months, Amber Duggar. She is an amazing person, and she is going to talk to us today about profitability, prosperity, wealth consciousness, and the energy of money. So thank you so much, Amber, for joining us.
I'm so happy to be here, and hello to everyone who's listening. I'm so grateful you're here with us.
Thank you, Amber. I wanted to just start our conversation by giving you the opportunity to share a little bit about, I know you and I both came from corporate and then health coaching, and then you moved into financial coaching. Now you even have your own financial coaching certification, and you just keep expanding and growing, creating a ripple effect in many ways. How does somebody come from financial corporate to health coaching and come full circle? It feels like it's really where you're meant to be. We talked a little bit before we recorded the energy of health coaching and financial coaching and receiving. So, how has that come full circle for you to now being the teacher of other coaches that are becoming financial coaches?
Well, it's one of those things that I think we all have experienced at some point in our life that we look back and we think, I never would have known I'd be here right now, but you can always go back and connect the dots. So, all I knew was back when I was in corporate that this was not the life I wanted to live. I didn't want to be in a cubicle. I didn't want to be serving in a way that didn't feel like I was actually uh, making a difference. I felt like there was just not a lot of substance in what I was doing. And so I had been looking into different things. I was looking into actually becoming a personal trainer. I mean, I just wanted to do something so different than sitting in my cubicle. And as I was looking through all of these different things, I had been seeking things outside of my day, outside of my work day to give me fulfillment, such as gardening and riding my bike to work and doing things that may not have been the most efficient thing, but gave me fulfillment. And this was really coming from a place of, I was always thinking of efficiency. I was a very type A person, and I really struggled with not having things be perfect. And so when I first came across, well, let me back up for a second. So while I was on my bike, this is really what started it all. I was riding this brand new bike down a hill, and unfortunately, the bike fell apart while I was going down this really steep hill. And so it launched me off of the bike, and I landed face first into the asphalt and had the bike land on top of me. And this was about 5 months into studying to become a personal trainer. I was still in corporate. But at that point, that accident changed everything for me because I realized that what I was doing just wasn't working. I had to completely stop everything I was doing. Thankfully, I didn't have any broken bones. But after about 45 x rays and 2 head scans, they sent me home. And so the next few weeks, I was not allowed to read, watch TV. I couldn't exercise. Everything that I really identified as someone that does all of these things, I couldn't do any of it. And so I was listening to podcasts. I was cheating a little bit. And I was listening to this health coach talk about how she had left corporate finance. And I thought, oh my gosh, how amazing would that be to be able to wake up? And actually, before you and I jumped on to record, Jen, you were mentioning your routine this morning of doing some yoga and stretching. And I always thought, why can't I do that in the morning? Like I'm always rushing to work. I don't have the autonomy to choose how I want to start my day. And just listening to her talking about how she was able to do this and work virtually and work when she wanted to just completely changed what I thought was possible. And so very soon after that, I joined IIN, which is this health coach school that we both have gone to. And it was in that moment that I knew I was on the right track because I just remember one of the very first things that we did was just settle ourselves and breathe in to just being present. And I thought, okay, these people are speaking my language. Like, this is how I want things to be going forward. And so, fast forward, graduating from that, starting my health coaching practice, moving to Bali, and realizing that so many people struggled with the more holistic side to money, that there are so many more facets of money than just the numbers, than just the profit, than just the calculations. There's emotion, there's desire, there's permission, there's expansiveness. There's so many different things. And so it was there that I was really encouraged to move back into the money space, but on my terms, using what I had learned from the coaching space and also really taking from my own experience of being scared out of my mind that I was going to run out of money. So I had a big journey to really understand my own relationship with money, to recognize that there are so many different perspectives and experiences that we all hold. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when we really become more aware and in tune with our relationship with money, everything starts to settle, our nervous system settles, and we're able to really be in this place of expansiveness and joy. And that's where it really aligns. Is I went into health coaching because I knew there was something more than us just surviving, that we could really feel good in our bodies. And the thing that I can't stand more than anything is seeing someone suffer when there's a solution available.
Mm. I love that. One of the reasons I love listening to you speak is the permission that you give to the listeners to really shift their beliefs or awareness around their relationship to money. And for me, that's always my takeaway when I listen to your YouTube videos. And you do have one on why you became a financial coach, which is similar to the story that you just shared. Many of the guests on my show often have some sort of life-changing event that really alters the course of their life. And I have a similar event in my life as well. And I shared with you earlier that many of the women that I support are wellness leaders. They're in the wellness space and also heart-centered coaches. So this topic is going to be centered a little bit more for those listening today in that space. And one of the things that I found and even experienced myself is in the space of health coaching, coaching, heart-centered coaching, yoga teacher, energy healer, sound healer. We're just going to kind of put those ladies in the container of wellness leaders. There's what I created something that I believe are money saboteurs. And one of them is a blocker belief that money isn't spiritual. And
Mm.
we tend to overgive and maybe undervalue. It's usually an overgiving more than an undervaluing, is what I've noticed in that space. And money seems to be in that space, in my experience, one of the hardest things for people to talk about. If you've already been a health coach, food is a sensitive subject. I feel like religion, food, politics, sex, and money are the hardest things to talk about. And so for me on my personal journey, it wasn't until 4 or 5 years ago, which I shared with you, where I had a little bit of a financial crisis in my business, that I even paid attention to money. So, what I realized is that there's this balance of, first of all, money is energy. And you speak about this all the time, which I absolutely love because I believe the same thing. I love how you invite us to keep money very neutral and to be less emotionally attached. And you also invite us to consider the importance of the balance between the masculine aspect and the feminine aspect of money by not only working and nurturing that relationship, but also creating aligned action through daily practices as a business owner and bringing that balance together. Can you tell me what your favorite or what maybe the most life changing aha moments in your relationship to the feminine aspect of money have been, or perhaps what you've witnessed in coaching your clients? Because we often see patterns. What are you seeing is really the opportunity to heal in the feminine aspect of money to create that balance?
Yeah, it's a really beautiful question. So that could be answered in so many different ways. But what I can say is that what I see as a pattern is in general, especially in the wellness space, that we have trouble receiving. And it's very easy for us to give because that's a very comfortable action, as nurturers, as individuals who are very compassionate and empathic. We can feel the hurt in other people. And so we want to really help by giving. But as we all know, we've heard this before, there is this cyclical experience, right? And so that is when we give, it requires someone to be willing to receive. And so, in the same note, that requires us to be willing to receive because by closing ourselves off, even if we don't think we're doing it, it will energetically close us off to so many other energies that come in, such as money. And so, it truly is just a value exchange. And something that I learned very early on that just blew my mind, helped me immensely because I knew going into health coaching that there were many people that could really benefit from that work. But when I was encouraged to do talks in Bali around the holistic side of money and talking about my own cash flow system that I was using, I really struggled with that because I personally just thought, who's going to want this really simple system that I use? It's really simple. And is it really that interesting? And are people really going to want that? Are people going to pay for that? That was what I was thinking in my own mind. And it wasn't until I heard this concept that said basically, you are always going to be attracted to what it is that you find naturally easy to do. So, people in the wellness space, this is something that you're naturally inclined to be interested in. You're a natural researcher. You love experimentation to see what really makes you feel the best. And you also can recognize that everyone has differences in their own body and learning to tweak that. And it's just like something that you live and breathe. And when you are in that place of expertise and passion, we typically don't spend money in that area of the thing that we naturally are really good at because we've been doing it and we've been researching it. We've been spending the time and energy and really immersing ourselves in that. And because of that, we're not going to value it the same as someone who perhaps has a very similar passion, but for something different. And so they're spending a lot of their energy on that. But then when it comes to their health and their ability to thrive and their energy, they're struggling with that because they have so much passion for something else. So when I learned that and thought, oh my gosh, okay, so you need to put yourself in the person's shoes that you are going to be serving, and if that's too difficult, think of something that you currently are struggling with that you don't feel very passionate about, but you definitely would love to not have there anymore. And just imagine what you're willing to pay if you had confidence that you had the right aligned person and that person was going to help guide you to where you want to be. Then it's like a no brainer. You're willing to pay whatever it is to make sure that if it's a priority that's high enough to you. So that's something that really changed how I charge for my own work and
Mhm.
also just feeling confident that there were people out there that absolutely would be grateful to invest in a solution that they've been struggling with.
One of the ways that you've worded this in one of your YouTube videos or podcasts, I can't remember what it was, but I remember a conversation that really was of interest to me in just sort of shifting the perspective in identifying the term charging your worth versus charging the value that you provide. And so shifting that into not the doing, which is another block that could come up is that we think wealth or money requires hard work and it requires the doing when in reality all of the experience that we have, life and learning and all of that that has created this momentum around our passion is in the being when it's aligned that we get to create that high value offer for the client. So I love that you bring in that shift because that is also a shift because a lot of the women that I support typically are those like you and I former high achieving type A personalities and we have that structure And then we step into the space of like, okay, I'm willing to heal my relationship with money and soften around the edges of money and look into this. And then we come full circle into bringing that back into balance. I'm curious. I love that you said the word receiving. When I talk about prosperity consciousness, receiving is that softness, that openness. It's like nourishing our body with food. If you're in a constant state of fight or flight, your body's not assimilating the nutrients anyway. And what I noticed in my own business with money, once I actually started to pay attention to it, which really didn't happen until there wasn't any. But what I noticed is my relationship with money was like, oh, there's enough. I'm not really tracking it. I'm not really budgeting, but as long as there's enough, like I know what's coming in and what's going out. But when I wasn't being intentional with the money, and I didn't know where it was going. Sometimes I would have a lot in my business bank account and I wasn't doing anything with it, which was kind of teaching it that I wasn't intentional or didn't really. It's, I think of a child, right? Like if you have a kid that you're just buying presents for, but it's sitting in the room, you're not paying attention to the kid, it doesn't feel loved. And so I started to realize that this is really about the relationship with money. And I notice as women, I'm speaking to women because that's who I serve. Where we are right now, we have created we do all the things and we don't have to. And because we've been doing all the things, there isn't time for receiving. And so most women don't know that they're blocking themselves from receiving. It can start with a simple receiving compliments, like just saying, really feeling the thank you when somebody gives you a compliment. I'm wondering if you would be willing to share with us, for the listeners, what would be some signs that maybe aren't necessarily around money, or they are, but that the listeners could be create some awareness that maybe they are blocking themselves from receiving.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, this is going to look different for everyone, but as you're listening, I want you to just think of a time when you have felt just really exhausted and maybe burned out and feeling like you're not having the energy for the things that you really love to do. That to me is a really big sign because typically when we say no without thinking about it, or it's just part of our, you know, thought process of just go, 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 do, because that's what we've been taught our whole lives to do, we tend to take on way too much and we, without thinking about it, may push away help and support. And delegation can be a very difficult thing to do if you're not comfortable with it or you're not used to doing it. But that to me is one of the biggest signs, is just feeling so exhausted or burned out or feeling like you're not really having fun anymore.
Mm.
Or is this all there is? If you're saying that to yourself, then that can be a sign that you may want to just become more aware of when you could be receiving help, for
Mm.
example, or support. Or if you find yourself saying something like, instead of thank you, or if someone, like you said, gives you a compliment, I think that's a big one. If we feel uncomfortable with that, that can be another sign that's just giving you a nudge that there's some really great opportunity for growth here in just experimenting with receiving. And one of the things that I did to really help myself with this, because I definitely struggled with this myself, which is why I can speak so clearly about it, because it was definitely me, was doing a practice of Ho'oponopono in the mirror every morning.
Mm.
And it sounds like you're quite familiar with it, but
My
for those
husband's from
that
my husband's from Hawaii, so yeah.
I was wondering, because I know that you're in Florida, but then on your
Yeah.
website you were mentioning Hawaii, and I'm thinking, I
I have
wonder
a
if
very,
they.
my daughter just graduated high school there. I have a very strong connection to Hawaii. Yes. So
Amazing.
I love
Okay.
that practice. Yeah.
And it's beautiful. And for those who aren't familiar with it, it basically translates, and it's a really beautiful spiritual practice that you can do without even having a specific thing in mind, but it still clears the energy and allows it to be very aligned and just peaceful is the way I like
Mm,
to think of it. But you just say, you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. And it's a very simple set of words, but seeing yourself in the mirror and hearing and receiving, I love you, thank you, I'm sorry, please forgive me. I mean, even now I get chills just saying it because right now, whatever was in the air has been cleared, right? There's this really beautiful practice about it, and it has helped me
mm,
immensely in receiving love.
mhm. Yeah, just the energy of love and the energy of money and the energy of food. I mean, they're all ways that we can nourish and resource ourselves. And so I love that practice of that prayer. And what I love about it is what I'm noticing is it unconsciously releases different types of emotion. Like the forgiveness could release shame, the love releases, doubt, and it just releases a lot of those emotions that come up that we create beliefs around money that don't really have to be there because, as you always say, money is neutral. So we create, you talk about the money origin point, or I don't know what you
Is that
call it,
wealth
but
point?
the wealth, not the wealth point, but the when sort of the origin, like the time that we created our belief around money.
The
And
childhood paradigm, maybe?
maybe that's what you call it, yeah. And we create this relationship that then we feel and we experience in our body because of things that have happened in our childhood. And so that's what we start to believe is our truth, when in
Mhm.
fact it's very neutral, and we can create new truths and beliefs and live in that flow of energy for ourselves and for, the generations to come, or the people that we can reach. uh, I want to dive into prosperity versus wealth. I love the word prosperity. To me, it has a very feminine, soft feel. To me, it represents a well, like a spring. And in Florida, where I live, we have springs, and they're beautiful, and they bubble up from the earth all the time. They're just constantly a constant supply of water at the perfect temperature to create a really healthy environment. And we have these beautiful manatees that swim, and they're just gorgeous. They're crystal clear. And so to me, prosperity represents that. It also represents a tree of life that blossoms and then drops an acorn that becomes another oak tree. So it's that energy of, just like, it's a very mother energy. I like to do archetype work where we give from a place of being resourced. And when we started this conversation, we talked about women in the wellness area, heart-centered coaches and leaders over giving. And the shift for me in prosperity was giving from a place of being resourced first. So I'm curious, because you mentioned there's a very big difference between prosperity and wealth. Would you be willing to share what some of those differences are and what that shift looks like?
Absolutely. So we're both on the same page 100% with this idea that prosperity is so different than wealth. Wealth is a component of prosperity, and wealth does, the definition of wealth is, having an accumulation of money as we know it as society. And that is a component of prosperity. And it's also important to be able to have the resources since money is a conduit of our intentions. We want to be coming from a place of full of intention where we can then put our resources where our intentions are and our priorities are. Uh, Prosperity, I love your analogy of the spring. That's beautiful. I have a similar way of thinking of it, and it's really just whenever I want to be reminded of my prosperity, I just take a moment to breathe. And we all have access to this beautiful life-giving substance everywhere we are. I mean, no matter where we are, we can breathe. And whenever I'm feeling a little bit out of my body, or maybe a little bit of that overthinking or analyzer comes in, I just take a moment and I close my eyes and I center myself and I ground by breathing. And that air is always around us. And so it's a good reminder that we are all beautifully, divinely supported. And prosperity is going to look different for each and every one of us, but it will feel the same. And that feeling is truly being at peace in all areas of our life where we feel fulfilled with our relationships and we
Mm,
have this beautiful, thriving body, and that we are able to use the resources that we have to align with our highest good and our highest blueprint. It's looking at all of the components of our life that we care about and ensuring that we feel full in those spaces in terms of just feeling satisfaction. Or if you're into human design, looking
mm,
at, you're not self-themed versus the way that you are designed. And so for me, it's satisfaction is definitely when I know I'm living my design. And if I feel frustrated, I know that something is off balance when it comes to the prosperity and looking at, okay, what is it that I may want to give a little bit more attention to? And so when I was in college, this is when this first came for me. I was in an economics class. It was a high level economics class. And we were talking about, the idea of essentially keeping up with the Joneses is the best way to talk about it. And the professor was really amazing. He was all about sustainability, and he just said, if every single time that we change the color of our drapes, we have to now change our furniture and change all of this other stuff, that really what's bringing us the most joy? And looking back on that, I always thought, well, what's the point of a business being profitable if there's no reason for the profitability? Like, what is the intention behind the profitability? And I would ask the professors, well, what are we doing this for? Like, we're having an entire class on how to increase profitability, but why? And the whole room would become silent as the professor would look at me with the oddest look and just say, well, why not? And I knew right then and there that there was a really big gap that needed to be filled when it came to understanding the entire point of us being in that class, getting that degree, striving for more profitability. If we don't have a reason for it, I really just didn't
mm,
understand. And no one could give me an answer until I was in Bali and I was realizing this is the answer. It's not about amassing as much as possible. I'm sitting in a cafe overlooking beautiful jungle oasis while I sip on my coconut juice, and I am sitting here barefoot, not having to worry. I'm getting chills right now, not having to worry about being at my cubicle at a certain time to be perceived as hardworking. But
mm,
I'm here preparing for a client session of someone that I know is going to be better off an hour later from the moment that we start talking. That is prosperity. And that was the beginning of a beautiful journey of uncovering what that really means for me and what we later really started to call profit for joy. And
mm,
so every one of our clients that go through and talk about this amongst themselves, it's going to look different. You may have a client who wants to live in a tiny home next to a lake, and you may have someone else who lives in down Manhattan and have two kids in private school. And you may have someone else that lives in Oklahoma City or London or a little tiny town in Estonia, but we're all going to have different needs and requirements because the resources are just going to be different in the different places. So it doesn't matter about the generic revenue goal. It
mm,
matters much more that you're calling in resources that align with the needs and desires that you have to live your highest blueprint. And the very first thing that I would love to share with everyone is if you are just starting out or you are getting to a place of being profitable, I want you to know that it is absolutely okay to give yourself full permission to come up with a strategy to become sustainable first, because it is the one thing I wish I heard and I never heard. I always heard, always focus on the impact. And yes, that's a
Mm.
given. You're a heart centered entrepreneur. Of course, you're going to be focusing on the impact. But until you're at a place of sustainability and a filled cup for yourself, it will be a struggle if you don't allow yourself the permission to be okay with receiving money to be sustainable so that you can be there for future people and that you can grow your impact. And yes, it will naturally shift into a complete and beautiful cycle of impact is exchanged for that beautiful resource that comes in. But please don't feel like you can't give yourself permission to make money to cover your bills in the beginning.
I love it. I'm feeling it. You said prosperity is a feeling, and as you're, I mean, it almost brings tears to my eyes because I've lived what you're saying, and I love the word. I use the word resourced. Being resourced is part of prosperity, and it was one of the things that I had to learn, filling my cup first before others. And I love that you give permission to be what you say is sustainable in your business and not feel bad about it, and that it's actually gives us the opportunity to, when we ask the question why, for me, it's to amplify my voice and values in the world. That's why. And so whatever that looks like, if it's helping people to take care of themselves through health coaching, then it's that. If it's helping people to heal their relationship with money, then it's that, because I know the value of it, because I've lived the experience, and I can see that when people don't have the knowledge or the understanding, it creates pain and separation. And so to be resourced enough to then want to share that with other people, it's like it's such an abundant and amazing feeling. And so it gives us the opportunity to amplify our values. And one of my values, and it sounds like it might be one of yours, is the freedom. And so for me, it's really letting go of, and I know so many women can relate to this, what I call is one of the money blocks, is that hard work equals success. I am hardwired for hard work. I don't need to prove that to anybody. I love to work. What I do doesn't feel like work anymore because I love it. So I have spent 20 years, ever since my first health crisis, rewriting that belief system that I'm allowed to thrive and prosper naturally because I have the resources and I am resourced to share what I already know to be true with those who are willing to listen. And it doesn't have to have hustle, it doesn't have to be hard work, it doesn't have to be what I thought was important, what I learned originally to be respected through hard work. It doesn't have to be that. I get to create what it is. And so prosperity for me is freedom to travel, which is where I'm at right now. It's freedom to eat the way that I want, which is high vibrational foods. It's freedom and choice. And so when you talk about prosperity the way that you just talked about it, it feels like a flower opening. It feels like it's opening and ready to receive light and nourishment from the sun, and it is softening around the edges. And so I love that. We started our conversation with the energy of money. We talked a little bit about feminine energy and money and just healing your relationship, opening up to receive more. We talked about the difference between prosperity and wealth. And I want to come full circle and close this with what I know that you're really good at, is not only are you a master at helping people to identify areas of their relationship with money that need healing, but you're also really great at bringing in that former corporate experience and giving people tools, business owners tools, sort of more that masculine energy, that structure, if we want to call it that, to bring into their business so that their business and their life can also thrive. So can you tell us a little bit about your profit for keeps, your profit for joy, and what makes that different than what maybe somebody else is teaching, specifically business owners?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing is, no one really has a strong desire to get super into spreadsheets and calculations and numbers unless you're the very, small percentage of people that really thrive on that. And that's amazing. But I know as a business owner, even when I left finance and corporate finance, it's a completely different animal running a small business versus managing billion-dollar contracts. It's just a completely different thing. And I remember receiving my first $800 from a client, and I thought, what am I going to do with this? Like, I know I need to put aside money for taxes. I know that it really needs to be going into a separate bank account. This is a business income, but it was a completely different experience for me. And so I really understand the perspective of having a heart-centered business, but also wanting to ensure that you get to still continue to do that full time and that you have the freedom to travel where you want and you have the freedom to choose how you want to structure your day. And that I absolutely cherish. And I know that many of my clients also cherish. So when I first was looking into this, I thought, okay, well, I'm in this health coaching school and they're telling me to charge $199 a month for clients. And I thought, that seems kind of low, but okay, let me look at that and see how that works. And then I was in a mastermind that was really advertising health coaches to make $5,000 months. And I lived in the DC area at the time.
Hmm.
And I knew that that was not really going to work either based on where I was living and what I needed to survive. And so looking at all of that, I thought, well, if I do that, I'm going to be $3,000 in debt every single month. And I'm going to be so overworked from the amount of clients that hopefully I'll even be able to find that quickly. That didn't sound like a really great solution. And so it was the first time that I felt like, I'm going to not take that advice because I had that background. But even with my background, I questioned myself because I thought, well, I mean, why would they be telling me this if it wasn't what you're supposed to do? But that at the time, I didn't realize that, they weren't thinking about all the different areas and all the different places that someone could be and what their life circumstances. And so that's when I realized that there was definitely a gap in terms of how we look at money because a lot of us think if we hire a bookkeeper or an accountant, they're going to handle all of the money things, including, perhaps making sure that we have enough money for all the things that we have in our business. And that's really not their job. And so, as the business owner, no one is going to care more than you about the longevity, sustainability, and cash position in your business. So, one of the things that I did very, very early on, and that I think every business owner or inspired business owner that you're thinking of starting a business, I encourage you to do is calculate your own number. And this can change week to week. This could change day to day. But it's good to become familiar with what it is that you'd really love to have come into your bank account every month to cover things that you really care about. I love to sew. If you look at my background, there's lots of sewing machines. Some people have no desire, including me, like a year ago. I would not have cared so much about it. But there is a budget in place to purchase beautiful fabric and to purchase programs so I can learn how to do more things on that. But we all have desires, so we want to put those in so that we can figure out what do I need to actually pay myself? What do I need to strive for as a business to ensure that I have enough money coming in? So we have a calculator that you can just put in how much you want to have your business pay you every month after taxes, and also what your current business expenses are, and then it will reverse engineer a goal. And that goal is golden because while it may feel like you're ripping the band-aid off a little bit when you see the number, it also gives you permission to align everything you're doing with that number and say, you know what? If I do achieve or exceed that goal, I actually will be in this beautiful place of prosperity because I will not only have the freedom to do what I want to do, but I will also be really confident that I'm not just running on a hamster wheel and feeling like I need to work harder to make that money, but instead it starts to naturally align the way you show up with the resources that you require for the blueprint that you've signed up for in this lifetime. So I highly recommend looking at that, and I'm sure that you can provide a link for that. Um, and the other thing is just looking at really recognizing that money is an energy, like we've been talking about, but that budgeting does not have to be a bad word. It does not have to be restriction. I have seen so many people shift their perspective around what a budget really is as a permission giving tool, as an expansive experience where we can say, you know what? I am going to quote budget in a beautiful 90-minute massage every week. And I'm going to both put that in my calendar and I'm also going to put it in my financial plan because that's expansive. If that gives you such a beautiful feeling after you're done with that massage to be able to go back into the next week fully refreshed, that is worth more money than you could ever imagine because you are feeling refreshed and rejuvenated and ready, and you're there to serve others. So it's really looking at this from a different perspective and seeing that it's just simply a container because all energy loves to move, loves to go in places, and if there's not a space for it to be, it will keep moving. And so that is process,
That is
right?
very true. Yep, it is so true. I love everything that you said. It makes me think of, you and I used to be health coaches, like the term dieting. Money, like that, we don't, restrictions don't feel good. And so budgeting isn't a restriction, but shifting that mindset into being more intentional with the way that you eat and noticing how you feel eating right for your body versus like with the money, it's not restricting. The budgeting isn't restricting, but more facilitating that healthy relationship. I love how you gave permission to create space for the things that resource us in our weekly or monthly budget. If that's what I heard you say, if it's the massage
Absolutely.
that takes you into the next week, then that is one of your weekly expenses. Do
Yeah.
you also create? What I'm hearing is you teach to create, and I know you have also a YouTube video on this, so I'm going to ask my assistant to link the YouTube video for true expenses.
Mhm.
You have a wonderful, you just need to go to Amber's channel because there's so many useful resources on her YouTube channel. Do you also create, you have a YouTube on this that I didn't watch, so I don't know what the answer is, but do you create a separate account for extra things, or do you believe that you intentionally create the space for that every week? Some people create that extra sort of buffer account for that vacation or that one really big bonus thing they want to do. And I'm just curious, how do you move through that?
Well, it really depends on what your intentions are. So, the way that we like to do it is everyone's is going to look different. So, we also use components of profit first, if you're familiar with that system. And so, in the business side, we naturally have a buffer that is created through the profit allocation. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with profit first, just a really quick rundown is that as a business owner, you want to be thinking about if we reverse engineer our revenue goal, then we have a really clear picture. So let's just say that we've done that and we have a $10,000 a month revenue goal. Well, in that, the revenue goal of 10,000 doesn't mean you're going to pay yourself 10,000 a month. You're going to pay yourself whatever you put in that calculator. So let's say it's $5,000 that you wanted to receive every single month, and that covers all the things you listed, including the true expenses that you were mentioning about, which to me, true expenses are those things that you may not have a monthly bill for, like your rent or your mortgage or your utility bill, but it may be something that you're either going to have at some point in the year, such as birthdays or holiday presents or vacations, or it could be something that's just billed once a year, such as like Amazon Prime is a good example. So I pay, I don't know, $12, $15 a month into a line in my budget. So it's like a monthly bill, but then it's enough is there when I need to pay for it. So when you list all of these things out, my encouragement is for one to be very expansive with those things, such as the vacation, such as things that they know they're going to spend money on. Let's put it in there because we want to make sure that you're prepared for it. And it's not feeling, like, oh, I need to rob Peter to pay Paul type thing, but instead you're preparing for that. So that will give you enough money based on your own plan. But on the business side, when we're looking at that whole $10,000, 5,000 is going to pay your normal things that you listed out. But then let's say we have $2,000 that's going to your business expenses. And then let's say we have $2,000 going to a place where we're holding just so that we have enough money for our personal taxes. Because when you do a system like this,
Mm.
you will naturally become profitable, especially in the eyes of the IRS. So you want to make sure, or whatever tax agency you have in your country. So you definitely want to plan for that. But then there's an additional piece that one last $1,000 goes to a profit category. And that profit category is where you're going to build a buffer or savings account in your business. And there's more to this, but that's the general, high
Mm.
level overview of that. And once a quarter, you get to receive a profit distribution. So a portion of that profit goes to the owner to either pay down debt or to go towards something that maybe is not in their regular day-to-day budget, but is something that I like to say is on your profit for joy list.
Mm.
So, that looks different for everyone, but I've seen everything from wooden Japanese hot tubs to solo trips to Paris to a new iPad. There's all sorts of fun things. It just depends on what you've decided motivates you as a business owner
Mm.
to follow the framework that you've given yourself.
So thank you so much for coming on today. I want to give some clarity to the listeners as we wrap up in ways that they can in the services that you provide. And what I'm hearing is that there's a profit first, profit for keeps, profit for joy. Are those the main pathways to
So
support?
yeah, our signature program is Profit for Keeps. And so that incorporates components of Profit First. It shows you how to reverse engineer your revenue goal. It also gives you a really clear pathway to learn how to go into expansive budgeting and use that as a conduit of awareness, really, or a gateway to understanding what may be stopping you from either receiving more money or spending more money. Honestly, some people actually do have trouble spending money, so they keep a lot of it in their bank
Mhm.
account. And it just gives you an opportunity to become much more clear and organized and intentional with the resources that are coming into your business so that you aren't wondering what the heck is that profit for, but you have a really clear picture of what that profit is for. And I find that when you have signs and signals showing that you're very intentional, and some people like to call this responsible financial steward, uh, more just comes to you
Mm.
because it's very clear that you're using this energy for
Mhm.
its highest good and that you are a conduit of it to allow it to help others, including yourself and your family, and feel these beautiful high vibrational feelings of joy.
Yeah, 100%. That's been my experience. And one of the things I always talk about is that prosperity, there's a sense of embodied trust, meaning that it's like that peaceful feeling. And I find that the energy in and the energy out is just, it feels abundant and it's really nice. So I love that piece. So would you say profit for keeps is focused more towards business owners? Is it for anyone, or who is that really for?
So at the moment, we have it broken down into three sections. And so we actually do have people who don't have businesses that go through our programs, but it has been really created for a business owner because I myself, as a health coach, I created what I was using when I first started. So if you are either thinking of starting your own business or you have a side business, or perhaps you already are full in swing of business, it really does help anyone in any of those stages because ultimately, whether you've been in business 10 years or you're just starting out, if we don't have a clear picture on how much we want to make and compare that to how much is coming in, not booked, but actually coming into the bank account, and a way to really maintain and organize those resources as it comes in. Because, we don't get all of our revenue goal in one deposit. It comes in a whole bunch of different deposits. And maybe we're also thinking about marketing and we're talking to different prospects and we're also doing webinars and we're doing all these other things. It can be easy to feel overwhelmed.
Mm.
And so, what this does is it gives you a really clear picture of, all right, all I need to look at is I'm going to use that example again. My revenue goal is 10,000. I have $6,000 coming in this month. All right, let's start feeling into how I can call in another $4,000 this month. What else can I do? And it gives you that really clear, cut and dry number that you can start having in terms of being able to just have your diffuse form of thinking or the way that you're going to download the information, or maybe you're going to go on a walk or you're going to take a shower, but you get more into that flow state where just ideas start to pop in. And then you realize, oh my gosh, that person's been wanting to collaborate with me. And she was thinking that we might be able to each take away about 6,000. What if we did that this month? And then all of a sudden you're over your revenue goal by $2,000.
Yeah.
And it just feels so good to know and have the confidence that by doing this, the money will be there. You don't need to constantly be thinking about it or checking your bank account, but instead you have a system in place that allows you to really step back in to that flow of why you started your business in the first place. So to get back to answering your question, yes, it's designed for business owners specifically. If you have a coaching business or an online business or a service-based business, or maybe you are we even have psychologists and naturopaths and
Mm.
different practitioners in the health space also use this system. And it's also great if you have been thinking about starting a business because it will definitely plant a seed for you to show you, okay, this is what I need to do. And so the main parts are, coming up with your why, and that's what we call the profit for joy. And really, it's a formula for prosperity. And then the second piece is really getting all of that into a personal, expansive spending plan and learning how to do that with your own personal finances, because it is not your fault if you're feeling disorganized there. We have literally never been taught this in school. And the financial industry and the educational industry honestly has failed us from that perspective. And so it is now on us to empower ourselves. And
Mm.
I want to thank you so much because, Jen, having these conversations are breaking down the taboo of not talking about money anymore, like you were mentioning before. And we are now talking loud and clear because it's so important to recognize this is not a taboo subject. This is a very beautiful, important resource for us to be able to live our lives authentically. And without having it, we're going to really struggle and we're going to be imbalanced and we're not going to be able to really step into our true selves. So it's looking at that first, that personal piece. And then once you have that figured out, it's so easy to create a business budget with components of profit first fit into there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your time and space and energy for this conversation. I do believe that as a collective, we are in a space of expanding and healing so that more around our relationship with money, so that more people that think like us can put more of our values out into the world and we can just begin to shift positive change everywhere. And that's why I'm willing to show up in this conversation, because it wasn't easy for me either to be like, okay, I'm going to talk about money, like let the judgment come. But it is, the more that I've come out to talk about it, the more I find that women, because I work with women, are really seeking permission, women and men, to have this conversation so that they don't feel burnout, they don't feel overwhelmed, so that they can be resourced to create the business and the change and the experiences that they really want to, from a place of feeling full and fulfilled and thriving and giving from that place. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. We are going to share all of the links. We will share the calculator. We will share your YouTube, your social platforms, Amber Duggar. And do you have a gift for the listeners that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to share the calculator with everyone. That is such a beautiful thing that I really do wish that every business owner had their hands on. So for those of you listening, if you decide to use it, please do share with others that it's available to them, because this is honestly the thing that I wish I had when I first started out. And it will absolutely change the way you think about your business and give you permission to strive for a number that actually aligns with your life. And it is such a beautiful gift. So please do take advantage of that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. One more question before we go, just for fun. What is the next place that you want to travel?
Ooh, the next place that I want to travel would definitely be Norway.
Norway. All
Yeah.
right. Get your
Yeah,
cold weather gear.
I grew up in the Rocky Mountains, so I love cold weather, and there's just something very special
Hmm.
about Norway, and my husband has always wanted to go there. So that is definitely on the bucket list for sure.
Okay. Well, it's not on my list, but Iceland is. But please, when you go, share a picture so that we have a reason to be inspired to go if it's a place that we want to go. Because I think sometimes people just don't know anything about the country, so it's not on their list. But that sounds like fun.
Yeah, and for those that are into fiber arts, check out Arnie and Carlos. They are two designers that live up in the most northern part of Norway, and they are just so much fun, but they are the most colorful knitters, and they have a
Hmm.
great podcast, and so that has definitely inspired me to go there because they have these beautiful sunrises, and there's just white everywhere, and it's just gorgeous. So,
I think this time of the year there's a lot of sun, right? There's like
yeah.
sun for many hours and yes, a lot of white. So before Amber got into sewing, she was into knitting. So that probably explains that.
Yes.
It's
I
important
just
to
like
it's important to have those hobbies that light you up because it's not just all about work. It's about the fun and the freedom and the play and the joy. So
yeah, I would almost say I would say that's the
put that
foundation,
first. Yeah.
right? Because by feeling into that creative flow, whatever it is, whether it's reading or painting or, just actually creating conversation with others, whatever gives you that spark and that flow is going to start to bring in opportunities where you get to also expand in the areas of your expertise in a way that feels that way. And so I think it
Yes.
is the number one thing to call in a really beautiful, expansive life is to just start doing the things you enjoy, and you'll start feeling that, and then you'll call it in.
I agree. I'm feeling into that. Thank you so much, Amber. Thank you for the listeners for listening in and have a beautiful, wonderful day.
Thank you
Aloha.
so much, Jen. Bye.